This is the History of Algeria podcast. Each week on Mondays, we'll be updating new information about the history of Algeria. This is an Eat to My Own Beat podcast. Welcome back to episode 20 of the History of Algeria podcast. Background of the archaeology of the Tassili Ajjer. Algerian rock art has been subject to European study since 1863. Surveys conducted by A. Pompel, Stefan Giselle, G.B.M. Flamand, Leo Friebinas, Hugo Orbenmeyer, Henry Breuil, L. Juliard, and Raymond Wolfrey. Tassili was already well known by the early 20th century by Westerners, but were broadly introduced to it through a series of sketches made by French legionnaires, particularly Lieutenant Charles Brenes in the 1930s. He brought with him French archaeologist Henry Lehote, who had later returned during the 1956, 1957, 59, 62, and 70. Lehote's expeditions had been heavily criticized, with the team accused of faking images and damaging paintings in brightening them for tracing and photography, while resulted in reducing the original colors beyond repair. Current archaeological interpretation. The site of Tassili was primarily occupied during the Neolithic period by transhumanist pastoralist groups whose lifestyle benefited both humans and livestock. Local geography, elevation, and natural resources were optimal conditions for dry season camping of small groups. The wadis within the mountain range functioned a corridor between the rocky highlands and the shadowy lowlands. The highlands have archaeological evidence of occupation dating from 5500 to 1500 BCE, while the lowlands have some stone tumuli and hearths dating between 6000 and 4000 BCE. The lowland locations appear to have been used as living sites, specifically during the rainy seasons. These are numerous rock shelters within the sandstone forests, strewn within the Neolithical artifacts, including ceramic pots and pot sheds, Litholic arrowheads and bowls and grinders, beads and jewelry. The transition to pastoralism following the African humid period during the early Holocene is reflected in the Tassili and Ajjer archaeological material record, rock art, and zooarchaeology. Further, the occupation of Tassili is part of a larger movement and climate shift within the Central Sahara. Paleoclimatic and paleoenvironmental studies started in the Central Sahara around 14,000 BP and then proceeded by an arid period and resulted in a narrow ecological niches. However, the climate was not consistent and the Sahara was split between the arid lowlands and the humid highlands. Archaeological excavations confirm the human occupation in the form of hunter-gatherer groups occurred between 10,000 and 750 BP. Following 7500 BP, humans began to organize in pastoral groups in the response to the increasingly unpredictable climate. There was a dry period from 790 to 7,900 and 7,200 BP in Tassili that preceded the appearance of the first pastoral groups, which is consistent with the other parts of the Saharan belt. The pre-pastoral pottery excavation for Tassili dates around 9,000 to 8,500 BP, while the pastoral pottery is from 7,100 to 6,000 BP. The rock art in Tassili is used in conjunction with other sites, including Dar Tikit in Mauritania, the steady development of the animal husbandry and the trans-Saharan travel in North Africa. Cattle were herded across vast areas as early as 3000 to 2000 BCE, reflecting the original spread of pastoralism in the area. This was followed by horses before 1000 BCE, and then the camel in the next millennium. The arrival of camels reflected the increased development of the trans-Saharan trade, as camels were primarily used as transport and trade caravans. Thank you for listening to the History of Algeria podcast. Please check back every Monday at noon Pacific time for a new episode. Also available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Check us out at www.eatmyownbeat.com.